Orange Farm residents are up in arms after the bodies of 2 children were discovered in the area this weekend. 6-year-old Simpiwe Mgcina's lifeless body was discovered in the early hours of Saturday morning by a passerby just hours after he was reported missing. And 8-year-old Mpho Makondo's body was also found just a few meters from where her friend's body was discovered. Newzroom Afrika reporter Malungelo Booi has been following those events. He's with us in studio tonight. Malungelo, I mean, there's no way of describing just the gruesomeness of what has happened to these young children here. Tell us about the response of the Orange Farm community to these discoveries.
Cathy, when we arrived there at around 7:30 this morning, you could sense that residents are still shocked and also trying to understand what happened, and that quickly turned into anger because they're saying that they don't understand how something like this could happen in this community again. They're saying that in March, another child in the same area, Cathy, in the same vicinity, was also found dead under these mysterious circumstances. Now, bear in mind, in June, there was another 3-year-old girl that was found murdered in that particular community. And of course, residents are saying that they don't understand why these children were murdered. In fact, when I spoke to the mother of one of the children, saying that she really does not understand who would want to harm her child, describing her child, in fact, that's Mpho Makondo's, her mother Lerato, describing her as a loving child, a child who loved to play, who just was loved by almost everyone in that particular community. So the community there, Cathy, is demanding answers.
Malungelo, when you talk about the 2 previous incidents in June and in March, those stories also made national headlines. Do we know yet if there is the work of perhaps a serial killer, a syndicate that is operating in Orange Farm and particularly targeting young children?
Well, if you speak to community members, especially at Extension 4, because this is where these, the incident that happened in March and this latest one actually occurred. They're in the same area. And residents there are of the view, Cathy, that perhaps there's a person or people that are targeting children in that particular community. Because if they're talking about the modus operandi, they're saying that these children, when the bodies were discovered, they have no marks on them or anything that shows that, they were stabbed or strangled. And that also raises questions to community members. And they say that actually it's the same with what happened in March with that young boy that was found murdered in March at Extension 4. But when you look at what happened in June, though, with the 3-year-old, it's a total different ball game, because that little girl was stuffed in a basket, and when we got there at the scene, there was actually blood, as compared to these cases that we're talking about now.
It must create a lot of anxiety for the rest of the community, especially those who have young children. What happens now to the cases of missing children in that community?
In fact, Cathy, today when residents, started to march to the scene where these 2 children were found, and there were also prayers, there was also a mother who joined, community members there and said that her son was also missing for about 2 weeks now. She's worried. She doesn't know whether her son will be found alive. But what has been interesting to see, Cathy, is how community members in Orange Farm have rallied behind these families, showing them support and calling on one another really to look after their children. And there's also the sense of fear, though. There was a lady that I spoke to in the morning, and she was saying that she really is worried now about allowing her children to go and play on the streets. I mean, when you move around Orange Farm, Cathy, there's children playing on the streets everywhere, and residents there are saying that criminals are taking advantage of that.
Any potential leads that the police are following up on where this case is concerned?
Well, police were saying to us that they're investigating cases of murder, and also they're still waiting for the outcomes of post-mortem. But when we were there, residents were also angry because they were saying that there's a woman who was found with the clothes of these two children. Remember, one of the little girl was found naked, and the young boy was half naked. So residents were angry that there's a woman who was found with the clothes, who was actually part of the community. And residents are saying that, in fact, this woman, Cathy, had been visiting the homes of some of these children, and the residents at the time were saying that this woman must come out and explain to them where she found these clothes. And one of the explanations that I got was that this lady actually has some powers where she can be able to see things, and residents were saying that, well, that's all good and fair. Her powers actually did not help us when we were looking for these children on Thursday and Friday. How come they were able to help her find the clothes? So residents are not buying that story. In fact, they're of the view that she may know more than she's telling.
Of course, the credibility issue for the police here is that they don't have a track record of breakthroughs, even in the two previous cases that they've dealt with earlier on in the year. And so, therefore, the community will question the extent to which they'll be able to get to the bottom of this.
In fact, residents, they are clear that they don't trust the local police. In fact, they're saying that the police in that particular area have failed them not once and not twice, several times. And they're saying that if police were doing their job, the crime levels in that particular community would not be as this high. And of course, saying that the children, because police are not doing what they're meant to do, the children continue to be victims of criminals.